Hi, and welcome to the Geek BAH Reviews One Piece Vlogs. I'm the Geek BAH Brent Hauserman here, with the vlog for the Alabasta Arc. Recently finishing this with my friend Nick, we've found ourselves loving it, and for multiple reasons. The arc basically takes place with the Mugiwara Straw Hat crew and Princess Vivi, who is journeying with them, reaching Alabasta, Vivi's homeland. Alabasta is a very obvious reference at Egypt, ancient Egypt specifically. And you see that in multiple places, from its desert-like appearance. It even has a pyramid-like shaped building in it, which is actually a casino. There's various references to crocodiles, to even the worship of cats, and seeing them as very high. Okay, that very high ranking, sort of. You get the point. But yeah. So, they go to Alabasta, and here they find out that not only is Baroque Works trying to take over, but there's also a rebellion going on, where the rebel army is about to strike against the Royal Army. That's it, Royal Army. So you have that going on as well, and the crew has to somehow stop both. Well, the main point of the journey at this point, they start out by going into the desert, and after Luffy ends up having a moment where he gets lost and eventually comes back, they meet with the Marines in a small city. Luffy ends up finding his brother Ace while they're being chased by the Marines and Smoker, who we met during the Lowtown arc. And so Luffy is reunited with his brother Ace, and Ace decides to join forces with the crew for a little, basically to achieve his goal. Some people might see that as a little greedy, but They go into the desert, have a few adventures on their way to another land. However, when they get there, they find it's pretty much a ghost town with only one person still living there trying to dig a hole and find water. They talk to the guy and end up leaving. So they continue on, and they go to Rain Base. There they begin to confront Baroque Works, but they end up getting locked in a cage after being basically tricked by Crocodile and Baroque Works. At this point, that you get to see a lot more of Crocodile, a lot more of who he is and how he works, and just his overall personality, and it really establishes him as a great villain at this part. And he's still probably one of my top 3 favorite villains of all One Piece. The others I'll get to later on, because they haven't appeared yet. So we get to see a little more Crocodile. We get to see some more of the other Baroque Works agents, including Miss All Sunday, who we saw a little bit so far. But then pretty much Crocodile leaves them to die after he kind of chases this Mr. Prince, who we find out pretty quickly is Sanji, just pretending to be someone else. He chases Mr. Prince because Mr. Prince basically took out a whole crapload of his men. So, meanwhile, one of the banana gators, which are basically the crocodile reference of the Egyptian like Alabasta, come out, and I guess it pretty much pukes out this giant wax ball that we find out has Mr. 3 inside. Earlier, we saw Mr. 3 had been eaten by one of the crocodiles, and obviously he used his wax powers to save himself. So at this point he's kind of beaten up by, I believe, Sanji. Yeah, Sanji ends up coming back. Well, not coming back, but he ends up getting there while Crocodile's chasing Chopper, which is a little complicated. But Sanji ends up beating up Mr. 3 and forcing him to make a key using his wax powers to free them. So at this point, they're free and they go off, and everything seems fine. Now, before this, I believe Luffy had faced Crocodile once before. I forgot to mention this. and Luffy lost big time. I'm sorry about this. My dog is growling at people outside. Well, my brother's dog, to be precise, but that's not the point. Give me a moment. Snoopy! Sorry about that. But yeah, he faced Crocodile once before and lost really badly. So at this point, he kind of gets into things, but nothing really happens as they go out to try and stop him. At this point, the rebel army is starting to attack. The royal army is getting ready. The king has disappeared. We find out later he's been kidnapped by Baroque Works. So, okay, at this point, basically, and I'm sorry for saying at this point all the time, by the way. I'm just trying to describe this in the best way I can figure out how to. So they decide to basically pull an attack on Baroque Works, who are inside the city while the rebellion is attacking. However, they basically are doing it to get Vivi to the palace so she can warn them and try to stop everything. So they all put on hoods and ride the Super Spot Build Duck Squad, I believe it's called. They ride them into town and basically split up, each of them going for different Baroque Works agents to take them out, while Vivi is pretty much free reign to get into the city alone. So they go their different ways, and they have these awesome fights. I mean, you see Chopper and Usopp take on Mr. Four and Miss Merry Christmas. I keep wanting to call her Miss Groundhog's Day because of her powers. Mr. Four is this obese Baroque Works agent who's really slow. He reacts like really slowly to things. It's kind of funny, but it's kind of just weird at the same time. His partner is Miss Merry Christmas, who is this mole woman. She has a Zoan-type devil fruit, able to turn her into a mole. So she's kind of tricky with the fact that she can burrow underground, and there's some subtle whack-a-mole references, and well, not really that subtle, but there's some whack-a-mole references in there with her power and with Usopp. And Mr. Four doesn't really have powers. He has a gun, though, that somehow ate a devil fruit. I'm still not even sure how that worked. I think it might have mentioned it later on, but I don't remember. But somehow the gun ate a Zoan-type devil fruit and it turned into a part dog. So he uses that. It fires baseballs, which Mr. Four is able to use his somehow extremely fast and powerful batting skills to use. And the baseballs are actually bombs. They're time bombs, to be specific. So that is just crazy. And since Usopp and Chopper aren't really the strongest members of the crew, they do have a hard time. But honestly, I think if it were like Sanji or Zoro or any of the other crew members, except maybe Nami, it would be easy. But anyway, speaking of, Sanji takes on Bon Clay, Mr. 2, who is one of the weirdest members of Baroque Works, but he's a good character, who's actually, more is revealed about him later on. Bon Clay is basically a ballerina. He's known as an Okama, which is Japanese basically for homosexual. I would consider him more of a transsexual than homosexual, though. And he's the only member of Baroque Works, the only officer agent who does not have a female partner. So that's interesting in itself. He's a very powerful martial artist who focuses on ballet kempo, which is his own created form of martial arts centering around kicking and dancing. And it's actually very effective, and Sanji is shown to have trouble with it. Their match is actually very well put together. It's very great. There's no other way to put it. It's just a really great match. And Sanji obviously ends up winning, but it actually does take him a little effort. Nami takes on Miss Doublefinger, the female partner of Mr. 1. Miss Doublefinger has really spiky hair and an almost slave girl-like outfit. It's kind of suggestive. Her power basically allows her to grow spikes from anywhere on her body, and Nami, not experienced at fighting, is shown to have trouble facing her. But Nami has this new weapon called the Climate Tact, made by Usopp, which surprisingly actually has some great strength to it and allows her to help defeat Miss Doublefinger. Zoro, meanwhile, takes on Mr. 1, Daz Bones. Daz is basically he can create a metal-like sword from anywhere on his body, a sharp edge. And because of this, the only way to really for Zoro to defeat him is to be able to cut steel, something he's never been able to do before. And throughout the fight, they even mention this, and Zoro even says that, so I can't defeat you unless I learn how to cut steel. And then he basically says, then I'll be the first person to cut steel. So Zoro ends up defeating Daz Bones, as kind of obvious. Now at this point at the palace, Vivi is trying to rebel against people. Well, not trying to rebel against people, she's trying to stop the rebellion. She's trying to rebel against the rebellion. So she goes to the castle and basically tells everyone she wants to blow it up. This is shocking to everyone, obviously, that the princess wants to blow up her own castle. But if it's to stop the rebellion and to stop Baroque works, they understand. However, Crocodile then comes and stops it all, and decides he's just going to be a complete jerk about everything, and not let anything go according to plan. So Koza, the leader of the rebellion and a childhood friend of Vivi's, then comes, and it's sort of like a three-way battle here. You have the royalty of Vivi, you have the rebellion of Koza, and then Baroque Works, Crocodile. The three leaders, basically, of each side. And I mean, I guess you could count Vivi as the leader, even though her king is officially the leader. So you have that going on, and then Crocodile basically brings out the king and crucifies him to the wall, pretty much, which is really interesting, with Miss All Sunday by his side. They're going at it, but then Luffy comes along and saves the princess after he drops her from after Crocodile drops her from the castle wall. And they get into another fight, but Crocodile ends up winning, even though Luffy has figured out his weakness being water. Which honestly should have been obvious, considering Crocodile has a devil fruit. But that's not really the point here. So Crocodile escapes and takes the king and goes with Miss All Sunday as well to the ruins to try and find the location of a mystical weapon called Pluton. They read the poneglyph, but Miss All Sunday tells him it's not there, and he kind of throws a fit and tries to kill her. So at this point, Luffy comes in and has his big fight with Crocodile. It's a really great fight between the two, and in the end ends up pretty much destroying the place. As he's leaving, he rescues the king and Miss All Sunday, who kind of doesn't want to be rescued, and leaves. So after that, the Alabasta Arc is pretty much done. That's the big part of it. From this point, it just goes into a little story of what they're doing after their little promised feast from Vivi and the king, and stuff like that. Then they head out. They leave. They have to escape basically the Marines, and they leave. At the end, there's this really touching moment as Vivi basically bids them farewell, and they all raise their arms and show their symbols that they had earlier in the series to basically show that she'll always be their friend. And they leave after that. And basically the end of this arc pretty much goes into Nico Robin, or Miss All Sunday, joining the crew. And that's where the Alabasta Arc pretty much ends. So after this, there are a couple mini arcs I'll group into one vlog. And then we'll go into the bigger ones, which I can do after that. So, signing off for now, this is the Geek BAH Brent Hauserman. See you next time.